You know, a few years ago, I thought there was something weird going on with me because I found myself not enjoying video games as much as I used to as a kid. I found myself not able to finish games. I would grow bored of them before even getting halfway through. I thought, maybe I'm growing out of it, you know? After all the normies that I used to surround myself with told me that games were getting better and better, and you can see that they still spout bullshit like that.
I think gaming now is amazing. And I never run out of video games to play. Like, anybody who's unhappy with video games nowadays, I think is a retard.
Yeah, it's actually crazy how good this show was. Basically, everything about it was perfect.
Jeff is the GOAT? Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
Hello to you, my little Jeffy Poo.
Thank you to my beautiful girlfriend and...
Hi everyone, I am a gay homosexual.
Ew, sick.
Well, obviously that has been a complete and utter lie for over a decade now. Games have never been as bad as they are now, and it seems that the hole that the game industry finds itself in has no bottom, with each year being worse than the previous. And each year I'm reminded of how grim the absolute state of gaming is when I'm showered with the audio-visual radioactive sludge that is the Game Awards, a complete farce of a game show that puts on full display the Hollywoodification of gaming. So it turns out the reason I was growing tired of games was because they're getting more and more boring. They all have dumbed down, streamlined gameplay with all the same features every time. A compass to guide you on the top of the screen and make sure you never get lost. Yellow, white, or whatever color of paint everywhere to make sure you never miss an item or the secret or the main path. Quest markers and pointers, making sure you never struggle with directions. Crafting, oh god, shallow as hell crafting systems in every other game, empty, uninteresting open worlds, shallow and poorly done stealth mechanics based on UI parentheses in the middle of your screen that fill up over time. And in the midst of so many hand-holding movie games, I thought I was just growing out of them. But the problem wasn't me growing tired of gaming. The problem is that I grew up in an era where games actually required you to use your head. They wouldn't hold your hand. They wouldn't inject cheap dopamine releasing feedback straight into your brain as a replacement for actual fun or challenging gameplay. Games then and games now are completely different, and I'm tired of pretending they're not. Gen Z and Alpha have the worst attention spans in history for reasons like this. And all of this was made extremely clear to me when I played Thief Deadly Shadows. Oh man, that game completely shattered all doubts in my mind. It gave me everything I wanted but didn't know I was missing for a long time. I guess it's a good thing that I haven't played a lot of older games, because now I can enjoy a massive library of actual good games without having to depend on the god-awful slop that the modern game industry shits out every year. And Thief Deadly Shadows, by the way, was already a considerably dumbed down game compared to the GOATs, Thief the Dark Project and Thief the Metal Age. These are games that don't hold your hand at all and respect themselves and you. And since this is a jolly time of year, I'll spend this moment to talk about a game series that I love. Thus, this video will be a retrospective or essay that will focus on how these games were, in my opinion, the most immersive games ever made.
I caught up with him just before he vanished into the crowd. It was the beginning of a very long education. Well, you got the danger part right anyway. Tell you what, you keepers can plant a few shrubs about town and I'll take care of me.
My apologies. I've been watching you, Mr. Garrett, so closely, in fact, that I'm afraid I'd forgotten we haven't actually met yet. I am Constantine.
Garrett is here among you somewhere. Seek, fetch, find him out.
Stand ye then in the green's infested maw, and speed ye of his judgments upon the weeds and writhing manfold.
For For those of you who have never played Thief, the quick summary is, Thief is a stealth, immersive sim game. Think Deus Ex, for instance. You're an extremely skilled thief named Garrett, who sneaks into places like nobles' homes, museums, banks, etc. to steal valuables in order to pay rent, before Garrett always finds himself caught up in a grander scheme. It takes place in an unnamed city during a fictional version of the Gothic period in the Middle Ages, with some steampunk, supernatural, and magic motifs. It's very dark fantasy in that regard. You move in the shadows to stay out of sight, just like in Splinter Cell, and use a variety of tools and gadgets to handle the challenges in each level. But as I said earlier, this video is going to be more about the immersion aspect of the game. There are already enough videos talking about Thief more generally, so I thought, why not do a deep dive and talk about how this game is so immersive. Immersion in this context is the ability a game has to make you forget about the real world around you, to have your mind fully involved in the game's universe. It boils down to making you forget that you are playing a game by successfully hiding the presence of the developers, the very real humans that made the game, from the player. Thief excels at that, even among immersive sims, and even compared to a lot of simulators out there, believe it or not. It's no wonder, because Looking Glass were actually making simulators before they were making games, like flight sims and driving sims. Whatever immersive sim means, that's what Thief is. There's really no clear definition, but a common trait among games that call themselves that are the multiple approaches to solving problems they give to the player. Multiple routes to get to a goal, multiple choices of dialogue that affect gameplay, multiple choices of weapons, each with its own approach to tackle the mission at hand. Thief does that very well. The grandfathers of first-person shooters, Doom and Quake, had level design that was very interconnected. Each level had an adequate amount of connected passages, shortcuts, backtracking, and secrets, so some of them gave you maps because getting lost was common. Picking up a key to open a door that you saw way back in the level and enter a new section to advance was a strong trait of their level design, so they weren't linear. Then Half-Life came out, heavily based on the Quake tech, and it went the fully linear way. Hallways after hallways of enemies, and so exploration was not really as strong suit. So if Doom and Quake are the midpoint and Half-Life went in one direction, then Thief went in the complete polar opposite direction. This is probably the least linear game I've ever played that doesn't feature an open world. The game's levels are sprawling. You're basically dropped in a quasi-sandbox level, with a list of goals you have to complete, and how to get there is up to you, even in which order you want to do them. It provides you multiple routes and entry points, some being obvious, some not so obvious, and some pretty damn well hidden. Before each mission, you're allowed to gear up with the money you've collected from the loot of the previous mission, so you can choose your playstyle here. Want more stealth? Buy water and moss arrows. Want to try plowing your way through? Buy fire arrows, mines, and a lot of health potions. Playing Thief really trains your sense of direction, and the maps you're provided are 1. Devoid of a pointer to tell you exactly where you are, so you can only know the general area you're in, and 2. Very rudimentary. They're basically just sketches of a blueprint of the places you break into, with some of them having no readability aside from the directions you can go by looking at your compass in your inventory. A lot of these maps are either drawn by Garrett himself or he just gets them from the right people, which is explained in the briefing cutscenes before each mission.
The house was constructed recently, so I've had to piece together my own map from observation and hearsay. Sounds like the place is a bit of a maze.
When you are tackling an unknown, desolate, and forgotten place underground, the maps are extremely cryptic naturally. When you break into a very challenging place, the map might be incomplete. After all, none of Garrett's contacts have ever made it too far inside to have that information. So even the maps are coherent entities in Thief's universe. They're not just interface provided to you by the developers to hold your hand. They too are part of the world building. Plus, you can even write your own notes on the map, which is a nice touch instead of putting pins on it, which is a much more gamey approach. A lot of fan missions and campaigns take it even further by stripping away even the colors that tell you which area you're in or have already visited. Maybe going a little too far in that regard for most people, but I like it when I locate myself in an unforgiving but believable space in the map. This is the lack of hand-holding that I appreciate, that not only lets you use your brain, but it actually requires it. It will engage your brain whether you want to or not, and it will be satisfying satisfying. It's possible to do all the navigation relying only on spatial awareness if you prefer it though. In missions where you are tomb raiding, like down in the Bone Horde or the Lost City missions, having to rely on spatial awareness to navigate these unknown and desolate places really makes you feel like you're in that situation. If you don't feel like exploring the catacombs of Paris in real life, then playing Thief will emulate that feeling. Each mission takes about an hour to an hour and a half to complete, and they're their own contained thing each, so you don't have to worry about anything else when you boot up Thief. You can play one mission, fully take in everything within it, and then take a break after you're done with the mission. This structure is perfect for engaging your brain for just enough time that it doesn't start to get you out of it. In Thief, you are always in control of Garrett. The context of the first-person controls never changes. It doesn't change when you're climbing ladders, it doesn't change when you're opening doors and chests, or when you're picking their locks, or when you swim. Changing controls depending on context is anti-immersive. This is something that Thief Deadly Shadows did, unfortunately, with lockpicking. So are animations that take away control from you. Modern games all have clunky animations whenever you press a button to do something, which takes away control from the player for a brief moment, depossessing the player character. When is it that in real life you suddenly lose control of your arms and just watch them do something for you? Never. If that did happen, I assure you that it would feel like you're possessed. It won't be you doing it. It will feel dissociated from you. But that's what happens when a game takes control away from you to play an animation or changing the control scheme. Since it's not you doing it, it extracts you from the experience, breaking immersion. In Thief, the only times you lose control of Garrett, I guess, is when you read notes, but those work like pause screens, which, by the way, are all contained and separate from the main gameplay loop.
Can you escape with your skin?
There is no bleed, thus, between menus and gameplay. With this stark of a separation, it doesn't feel like control is taken away from you. It's such a subtle yet effective design choice for immersion. In System Shock 2, on the other hand, there's a lot of menuing and inventory for you to manage, which changes the control scheme. And that's why I think Thief is a slightly more immersive game at the end of the day. When playing Thief, you really do feel like you're a thief. Unlike in RPGs, where you can choose the Thief class, which most of the time is just defined by stats and skills, which overlap with other classes and means that you can do pretty much everything other classes do to an extent. In Thief, all Garrett has are his tools of the trade. You can't cast spells or become good at sword fighting by leveling up or picking up skills or stats. Your enemies, the guards, the zombies, the mages, all of them excel at their thing, which is mostly combat, and Garrett is the only character who can do the sneaking and thieving. Even the thieves from the Downwind Thieves Guild, or the assassins who try to kill him, do not have in-game behavior similar to his that really sells the sensation of you being the true thief, specialized at doing just that. All the acrobatics, all the hiding in shadows, the sneaking, the swimming, the scheming and sneaky tactics belong to Garrett and Garrett alone, and by extension to the player. There is no item shimmer, let alone yellow paint in Thief. There are no indicators telling you where to go, or floating text, or speech bubbles telling you what your current goal is. You can find clues on where to go if you pay attention to the level design and the information that you can overhear from NPCs.
Yeah, but while they're squabbling, they ain't fencing the vase neither. That vase is just gonna stay locked up in Lord Donald's lair.
Yeah, but it's not like it's doing Donald any good, since Lord Reuben has the key to the lockup.
You can then connect the dots to know where you should go, and the loot is mostly easily identifiable when the loot looks similar to mundane props like the wine bottles, which just have a different texture to tell them apart, while the player has to learn to pick them apart, because spamming the grab button to try and pick everything up is not a good idea. You can throw items around by accident, causing a racket, which will alert every guard in the vicinity. These are games that require you to think and be careful, unlike all these shitty over-the-shoulder horror games where the environments are all static and full of useless dressing, so you can just run around pressing the grab button and grab everything you can because there's no consequence. And repetitiveness is not something you'll find in Thief. Unlike stupid modern games that have you pushing the same exact cabinet over and over, for instance, or break the same stupid wall over 20 times, as the devs can't help but be lazy and add these cheap dopamine releasing gamey gimmicks that are satisfying, air quotes, for the trick your brain into believing you've achieved something, but are not actually fun or meaningful challenges. Thief remains fresh at all times, which makes its long runtime of 18 hours not feel like it's tiresome padding. You won't find repetitive gimmicks that feel out of place. Loot placement and secrets don't fall into patterns you could start to notice. Each mission is themed differently, with some being manor break-ins, others crypt raiding full of the undead, others have you break into Hammerite temples and prisons and opera houses, and then you can explore entire city segments. The enemy variety is massive. There are several different types of human enemies: guards, Hammerites, mages, archers, thieves who are slightly smarter than regular guards, civilians, masked servants. For non-human enemies, there are animals like burricks, spiders, exploding frogs, zombies, otherworldly apparitions, ghosts, hammer haunts, insect beasts like Mantis Man and Cray Man, Sasquatches, flying elementals, Rat Man. There are mechanical robots and security cameras, and unique enemies like whatever this thing is. The variety in environmental hazards as well is very big. All the booby traps Garrett has to face are all unique, which is a feature of the game being made in an engine where the levels are made with BSP brushes, similar to Half-Life and Counter-Strike. Instead of static 3D meshes you'd have to model elsewhere like in Blender or 3ds Max. This allows for the Dark engine to be much more flexible instead of reusing 3D assets everywhere, and all of this variety is achieved so that it feels in-universe. It doesn't lose sight of the essence of the world building. It's all very coherent. Many games that have a lot of variety to everything end up losing their vision and doing many things on a surface level with no depth. Not in Thief though. Everything feels natural and not just like filler. A core philosophy of Looking Glass was to avoid interrupting gameplay, like I said earlier, for instance with dissociative animations, but they also refused to implement dialogue with options for you to pick. One of the reasons was, according to them, that the options you could pick would be limited, and if you don't have the option to say what you really want to, your immersion is shattered. Instead, any dialogue you listen into is through eavesdropping, and if someone talks directly to you, all you can do is listen.
Damn hadn't rotted my lungs.
And you don't have to stay, you can just go away. It's not like in Half-Life 2 where you have to wait and listen to everything before you can move on. And listening to conversations as you hide and plan your next move is much more immersive, as it maintains your brain engaged in the gameplay loop.
Hurry! Sound the alarms! Seal off the area!
Why? What happened?
Sheriff Truart has been killed! The killer must still be in the building!
What? The sheriff's been murdered? How?
I don't know! Sound the alarms!
I better keep a low profile or else I'll be pinned as the killer.
And they made sure to make these conversations between NPCs as entertaining or useful as possible. There were none that had me go, I don't really care, and move on. They're all relevant and enjoyable to listen to.
That's good, but let's try it a little more angry, like this. But wait! Who is this I spy? Who dares fell wood from my domain?
But wait! Who is this I spy? Who dares fell...
No, no! With gusto, and emphasize the word dares, like this. Who dares fell wood from my domain?
I've got a better idea. Why don't you sing the part of Canandra, Forest Princess, tomorrow night? And while you're at it, why don't you find yourself another leading lady?
Huh. Maybe I will.
And of course, Thief is not afraid to give you a game over screen. What I mean is, you can fuck around as much as you want. Remember in Half-Life 1, where you could kill every allied NPC you wanted, but that was stripped away in Half-Life 2 because presenting the narrative the way the devs intended became the priority? Well, it turns out doing that takes freedom away from the player, and less freedom equals less immersion. You can kill NPCs that are required for the missions, and that gives you a game over, of course, but the point is in letting you do it. Every action that you take has a reaction, and that makes the game's world believable. You can even beat down the doors to open them if you can't find the keys. There are consequences. It makes a lot of noise. It alerts the entire map to your presence. But the point is in the choice, and these things are not explicitly told to the player. It's up to them to figure them out, and the sooner the player realizes that the game is made with interactive, flexible systems which allow for creativity, the quicker they will be attempting creative ways to solve problems. These flexible systems, as they called it, are a consequence of their philosophy of creating simulated worlds first and then introducing gameplay to them. I simply call it good game design. Even in games like Ocarina of Time, all the tools you have in that game have a different effect for each enemy that you use them on. Even to this day, when I play it, I still find new ways that items can work on certain things. Ice arrows, for instance, freeze certain enemies, which makes your life easier. And if you use them on Bongo's hands, he actually tries to break the ice. This is just genius. Reactions that make you go, oh, of course, that works, that makes sense, are a testament to how these games were made with simulation in mind. And then Majora's Mask, where the NPCs in town have entire schedules they follow throughout each day, regardless of you. This point is gonna be important soon. But these are simulated worlds, gentlemen. And speaking of this, you can always know that a game is a soulful gem if it contains infighting between enemies.
You got too far this time, you camel-man and tunic-wearing mollycoddle! An arrow in the throat that'll shut you up!
And that gives rise to things like abdication of authorship and emergent gameplay. The game allows the player to come up with solutions that the devs could never anticipate and witness situations that are completely unexpected and satisfying, that they can even tell interesting stories later on. Those can go from strategies to straight up cheesing. In Thief, I've lost count of how many times I've climbed on places the devs did not intend for me to climb, because you can mantle on any ledge provided there's enough space for you. Any ledge, not just preset spots marked by idiotic yellow or white paint like modern slop games love to do. You can attach rope arrows to any wooden surface, which allows you the freedom to do acrobatics in any way you want. Here, for instance, I decided that the best way to climb down this weird place without dying was to shoot a rope arrow at the wall and just leap to grab it, which is clearly not the way Looking Glass intended for me to descend, considering the directional precision and distance I had to leap. But it works because they designed this game with such flexibility in mind. Unlike in the newer installments where you can only shoot rope arrows in pre-designated obvious spots. The world building is done in such a way where everything makes sense within itself. Things that feel out of place within Thief are very slim. Let me give you an example related to gameplay. The items you find are all in locations that make sense for them to be. Water crystals can be found where there is water. Moss crystals can be found in grassy locations with lots of plants and bush. Fire crystals are found next to fire and lava. If you find a secret containing loot, it's in an area where it belongs. Finding a hidden switch that reveals a secret compartment hiding gold and jewelry in a noble's master bedroom makes sense. Finding the same kind of loot behind a brick wall out in the streets wouldn't make as much sense. But if you do find a stack of loot in the fucking basement, there's always an explanation for it. In this case, for instance, you can find a note that was left behind explaining how it had to be moved there temporarily. This provides a very satisfying feeling whenever you find things like this, an aha moment where you outsmarted the characters that put that loot there. And this is key. Through this immersive world building, Looking Glass managed to make these things you find feel like they were put there by the characters or the game's world itself, and not by the devs conveniently putting it there just for you to find it, to reward your exploration efforts. Looking Glass built believable worlds. Not only they created simulated worlds first, but they also gave life to them through their world building. One of my complaints about modern games, and especially VR games, is that they don't leave space or time to build a world world before thrusting you into the game, which makes the world seem small and unimportant compared to you, the player. Garrett is just a thief in a world full of different people, factions, happenings, and events that occur in the background, regardless of him. They even made up words the characters use frequently in Thief's universe, like Taffer, or how the pagans talk sees like this, unlike all them rests of the men fools. It's like there's a world of things happening in parallel to what Garrett's doing, just like in real life. This makes the world feel truly alive and vast. You can read and hear about what's going on out there through gossip, notes, and environmental storytelling. You read about some event in one mission, and in another mission you just happen to stumble yourself upon something related to said event. Attention to detail, folks. It even happens across the different games. You sneak in to rob a character in the first Thief game, and in the second you hear the guards talking about how that guy is doing. You hear gossip about a haunted, cursed place early on in the game, and there you go. One of the final missions, you have to go there. Foreshadowing and build up. All these things serve to blur the conceptual boundaries of the world. Blurring the boundaries was something the guys at Looking Glass strived to do to make their game worlds believable. They created a world with a history and lore, and then by subtraction they picked apart what they would present to the player in-game. There's probably stuff that only they know written in a book somewhere about Thief's world, but with what's given to you in the games you can kind of infer in your mind what the rest of the world looks like, which is why the fan communities of Thief are some of the greatest. They produce some of the best fan content for a game that I've ever seen. They expand the world without betraying its essence, because Looking Glass made sure to leave a lot of room in our imagination by blurring those boundaries, like in other fandoms where the product failed to do this properly, and so the fans are forced to expand those boundaries themselves, and 100% of the time the result is the complete twisting of the essence of the original product over time. God, think about how bad all the backrooms content has become, so nonsensical, or even worse, the SCP Foundation, how stupid it became over time.
SCP-7052, which is, get ready for this, this SCP is the act of shoving spoons up your asshole.
This is how important this blurring the boundaries thing is, and Thief also does that physically in a lot of games. You can open the world map and you can clearly see the bounds of the world. If you try to walk up there, well, you're going to be met with an invisible wall or something. Thief's design does not allow that to happen. Looking Glass builds a vast world on paper basically, and in-game subtracts from that, reducing our physical access to certain areas of that world one at a time in the form of each mission. In each of them, you are exploring one piece of this world that you perceive as big because of all the lore that you find, while they hide the physical boundaries from you. Anyway, by presenting lore and story through the point of view of Garrett, as he finds out more and more about what's going on during his missions, through gossip, eavesdropping, notes, and memos left by NPCs to other NPCs, or to themselves in the form of secret diaries, and in cutscenes as Garrett monologues to himself between each mission, Thief manages to make exposition not feel like exposition. This was Looking Glass's goal all along. In Thief the Dark Project, you'll start to hear about some entity known as the Trickster here and there, and then you are requested to steal a sword from the mansion of a reclusive, eccentric noble who's come to town before his true identity is revealed. In Thief the Metal Age, you start to hear the name Karas here and there, and how all the trees are dying and the world is rapidly changing because of the activity of some new sect of the good old Hammerites who have ranged away from them and are brewing something sinister in the background.
I used to grow my own spice, as well as fruits and vegetables, but all my crops died months ago and won't grow back no matter what I try.
It's as if all the plant life in the city up and died. Have you noticed that all the trees in Eastport are wilted and dead?
In Deadly Shadows, you read about a creepy hag who steals the skin of children in fairy tale books, and you hear urban legends being gossiped around before you realize that this thing might not be as fantastical as everyone might have thought.
Brother Drept has permission to scour the city for this murderer, this hag, which he has sought these many years.
In fact, if you were paying attention, you could see this coming since the previous games. Things are happening in parallel to Garrett's work and they slowly converge as the games progress. It's a way to ease in exposition and let your mind run wild before you actually meet your fate. I find world building converging with story like this very engaging. Thief doesn't really have a soundtrack per se. It has ambience, most of which is composed of synthesized samples. There are drones, synth pads, and textures, which repeat in short loops, and then sounds are layered on top to give it flavor. This was a deliberate sound design choice by Looking Glass. Thief is very sonically reliant. You have to listen closely to the game to be able to navigate properly, hearing the sounds of enemy footsteps, hearing the hissing of cameras behind corners, the gossip of guards as they give you important information unknowingly, and so on. So a deaf person would not be able to play this game because hearing is so important. If they had put background music everywhere, the sounds of real instruments would mingle together with important gameplay sounds. Pure ambience therefore allows you to properly take in the gameplay soundscape. Another reason why they chose this ambient sound design with synthetic looping sounds is because it has a hypnotic effect. Not in the sense that it puts you to sleep.
Focus and actually close your eyes, let yourself go in, okay?
Sleep. All the way down.
What the fuck? Look at this stupid shit! What is this?
But that it focuses your attention on the game. Yeah, they went that far to make the game as immersive as possible. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that the guys at Looking Glass had the same opinion that I have about video game music. Way back in the 90s, they predicted this. Eric Brogius, the sound designer for Thief, said that as everyone gets good at composing music, everything starts to sound the same. Nowadays, 9 out of 10 games have the same generic, uninspired orchestral soundtrack with no recognizable iconic themes or motifs. It's as if everything comes out of the same conveyor belt. It's only going to get worse with AI that will be fed with these very generic scores and will shit out even more soulless versions of them. Playing Thief in this day and age is a breath of fresh air then. It even does something that I really appreciate for atmosphere, which nobody talks about, including all the shills and scummy video essayists who sold their souls to glaze the Silent Hill 2 demake, so they forget to mention all the design points they stripped out of that demake, including this, which both Thief and the OG Silent Hill games did, which is giving each environment, each area or room in the map its own ambience, to noticeably separate and contain each space sonically. You walk into a room and the soundscape suddenly changes for no clear reason. When you do this with ambience, the effect is that it first brings your attention fully back to the game. Second, it gets your brain trying to find a reason for the ambience to have changed, so it ramps up the tension. Unexplained sounds, especially when they're unique and ambiguous in nature, which is easily achievable when you avoid generic orchestral scores and stick to creative synthesized sounds, makes your imagination kick in automatically to try and make sense of it. These ambiguous sounds were also used a lot in the original Silent Hill games to make you scared of the unknown. Third, containing the spaces like this helps create a sense of isolation. Other places unconsciously feel more distant, which increases the tension, and tension increases focus, more immersion. And fourth, by assigning each area its own ambience which changes abruptly, the ambience gets anchored to the area. You perceive it as an entity instead of an interface disconnected from the game's world. It's a way to integrate ambience to space while not being literally spatialized. And speaking of spatialized sound, Thief has that. It's not super crazy, but it does a good job spatializing and occluding sounds. Leaning against a door lets you hear more loudly the footsteps and other sounds from the room behind it. It's very easy to pinpoint exactly how many guards there are, in which direction they're walking, and their distance to you. Closing doors blocks sound to AI as well, so you're able to make noise without enemies being alerted if you close the doors to the room you're in. Many ambience noises are spatialized to specific locations, giving life to the levels. The noises of critters in the wilderness, the flowing of water in ponds and canals, the humming of lights on the streets, and disembodied noises in specific locations were positioned with clear intention, yet they are very coherent, which makes it not seem gamey or an intervention of the devs on your gameplay. Eric Broges lamented when Thief started moving away from this sound design philosophy. In Thief Deadly Shadows, ambience is made of longer, more natural sounding loops. Separation of ambience between areas is not as present, so it reminds more of a conventional score. Still pretty good though. Leagues better than the fucking VR game with its comically Elder Scrolls-ified music looping everywhere the same. The lighting in Thief is just chef's kiss. I know it's not Le Epic RTX or the Pajit Engine 5's Lumen, which are a way to make ray tracing or path tracing viable by abusing AI upscaling techniques and fake frames, also known as cheating because computers still aren't even close to being able to handle true path tracing in real time with no shortcuts. But the engine Looking Glass Studios developed for Thief and System Shock 2, the Dark engine, produces some of the most immersive lighting I've seen in games. It's not about hacking epic real-time GI or 8K resolution light maps. It's about creating a mood, which is something modern games completely failed to do, despite being way more photorealistic. Quake and Thief still have some of the best ambience lighting. It aged like fine wine. Look at this and tell me this doesn't look beautiful. And this is from a guy who started playing Thief through Deadly Shadows because I thought back then that the first two games looked too ugly and raw in pictures. But the lighting is just one piece. The art direction is good as well. It's about intentionality. They managed to make the props, the textures, the architecture, and everything else, even the ambient sound effects, going back to that a little. They're all put together very deliberately. There's no excess or overdressing, even though the first game has some weirdly empty places. So when you walk into a room in Thief, the high degree of deliberation makes it feel like there's a lot of purpose in every little corner. You might be thinking, what the fuck is this dude saying? It's something that you just have to feel for yourself when you play it. And maybe you won't. Maybe this is particular to me. But this is why I say that if Thief was more popular, there would be video essayists going schizo mode on how there's something going on in this inconspicuous corner in this game, like they do with Silent Hill, but also with other old games like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, GTA San Andreas. Like, people go schizo about that game. Fucking Bigfoot feels like there's a presence there. There's really no word to describe this, but aura, I guess, comes pretty close. It's the same feeling I get when I'm in a museum surrounded by art made with human soul. There's a detection of agency effect, and so in Thief, every corner or room, every dimly lit secret passage feels like it has something more to it, even when there is really nothing else there. And it's also the exact same feeling you get when exploring some random Gmod map, that uncanny feeling of a liminal space, except Thief gives off this feeling even more strongly than the Gold Source or Source Engine maps, which is why all these people who make videos about this should not sleep on Thief. The atmosphere is just that good. It needs to be studied, dude. This is completely and utterly absent from modern games. The reason being, these modern games all put so much importance on photorealism that the art direction has to put props everywhere, details everywhere, every desk has to be full of shit, every shelf has to have objects objects on them for the realism, dude. Every corner needs to have boxes or debris or trash scattered because that's how it is in real life. But in reality, this is all just dressing. It's there to fill up space for the dopamine fried brains of the modern audience. There's no intentionality behind any of it. No agency. It's just filler. And since it has no soul behind it, there is no human presence. It just feels dead and stale. No atmosphere can be felt, therefore. Thief basically made me realize why I've always liked stealth games. Not all of them, but a stealth game without atmosphere is simply boring, and the original trilogy of the Thief games are the best when it comes to atmosphere and how it involves your mind. Makes it simply the most immersive game I've ever played, with System Shock 2 being a close second. It completely mogs any modern game. It respects itself, it respects the player's intelligence, and the best thing is there's always fan content being made, so you can sink in hundreds of hours in this single player game from over 20 years ago. That's more immersive than anything I've ever played in VR, and even if you don't care about any of that, it's still worth giving it a try, because it's a really solid game, aged very well. So there you have it. I hope you had a Merry Christmas and have a very pleasant New Year's. Hopefully 2026 will be a better year for gaming. See you later, guys.